After humiliating his black employee in front of everyone, a boss never expects her to come back, not just for revenge, but to become his business partner. How did she turn the tables? Stay tuned to find out, and let me know in the comments. What would you have done in her position? It was a regular Monday morning, but for Tasha, nothing about that day would be ordinary. She had just received a message from her boss, Mr. Pierce, asking her to meet him in his office. Tasha was already on edge. She had been working under him for nearly 2 years, and things had been tense, to say the least. But nothing could prepare her for what was about to unfold. Tasha walked down the narrow hallway, the sound of her heels clicking against the cold floor echoing in the empty space. She paused in front of Mr. Pierce's office door, taking a deep breath, trying to shake off the nervousness. She had grown used to the occasional cold shoulder, the awkward silences, and the subtle but unmistakable microaggressions. But this time, something felt different. When she knocked and entered, the room was already heavy with tension. Mr. Pierce sat behind his massive desk, eyes locked on the screen of his computer. His expression was unreadable, his posture stiff. He didn't even look up when she walked in. "Sit down," he said flatly, without any sign of warmth. Tasha hesitated but took a seat across from him. The silence that followed felt suffocating. The usual banter or pleasantries that had sometimes lightened the mood were nowhere to be found. Tasha could feel the weight of his gaze without even looking at him. It was as if something was simmering beneath the surface, and she had no idea what it was. Finally, Mr. Pierce spoke. "Tasha," he started, his voice slow and deliberate. "I've been noticing something lately. Your work has been slipping. I'm not sure if you're just distracted, or if you're simply not cut out for this position. You know, it's hard to tell sometimes, especially when someone's not as experienced as the others." Tasha's stomach sank. She had been working harder than ever, staying late, taking on extra projects. Yet in that moment it felt like all her effort was being dismissed. It wasn't the first time she had felt the sting of his words, but this was different. There was something in his tone, something that wasn't just about work. Tasha wanted to speak up, to defend herself, to explain how she had been trying harder than anyone to prove her worth. But before she could say anything, Mr. Pierce continued. "I don't think you're a good fit for this company anymore. In fact, I'm considering moving you to a different department, or maybe even letting you go entirely. It's just not working, Tasha." Her breath caught in her throat. She had worked tirelessly to prove herself, and now, after everything, it was all about to fall apart. But as Mr. Pierce looked at her, something strange flickered in his eyes, like a glint of smug satisfaction. "I'll tell you what," he said, his voice laced with an almost mocking tone. "I'll give you one last chance. If you really think you're as valuable as you say you are, I want you to put together a report by the end of the week. If it impresses me, we can talk about staying. If not, well, I think you know the outcome." The way he said it made her skin crawl. There was a smugness there that she couldn't ignore, as if he was setting her up to fail, like he had already made up his mind about her. He had the power, and he made sure she knew it. Tasha stood up, holding her breath, feeling the rush of anger and frustration bubbling inside her. But she couldn't afford to lose her job. Not now. Not when she had come this far. "Fine," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll do it." Mr. Pierce nodded, clearly pleased with himself. "Good. I'll be expecting it." As she walked out of his office, her mind raced. She couldn't believe what just happened. How had things gotten so bad? How had she gone from being a dedicated employee to someone barely given a second chance? But deep down, something told her this wasn't the end of the story. The power dynamics in that room were shifting, and Tasha wasn't ready to let things play out the way Mr. Pierce thought they would. What she didn't know was that Mr. Pierce had underestimated her resilience, her talent, and her determination to prove that she belonged. and in just a few short months, he would be the one left shocked when she became his new partner, far beyond anything he could have ever imagined. The next few days felt like a blur. Tasha buried herself in work, determined to prove her worth, despite everything Mr. Pierce had said. Every morning she woke up early, diving into research, pulling together data, and writing reports. She didn't just want to impress him. She wanted to show him that she was more than what he assumed. She was stronger than his words, more capable than his judgment. But as the deadline loomed closer, the pressure grew. Tasha couldn't shake the feeling that no matter what she did, it wouldn't be enough. Mr. Pierce had already made up his mind about her, and his dismissive attitude had planted a seed of doubt in her heart. But there was a fire inside her, a fire that wouldn't let her give up. The day before the report was due, Tasha stayed late at the office, fine-tuning the last details. She was exhausted, but she refused to back down. She knew she had one shot to turn this around. As she stared at her screen, typing the final paragraph, a thought crossed her mind. What if I'm not just a worker here? What if I could do more than just follow orders? The next morning, Tasha walked into Mr. Pierce's office, carrying the report. The air in the room felt different. He wasn't behind his desk, pacing as he usually did. He was sitting with a cup of coffee, his brow furrowed, looking over some papers. He looked up as she entered. "Good morning, Tasha," he said, a tone that was a little too casual to be sincere. "Let me see it." Tasha placed the report on his desk, watching closely as he flipped through the pages. Her heart raced in her chest. She had poured everything into this, every ounce of focus, every bit of skill, and every bit of her energy. She could feel his eyes scanning the pages, his expression unreadable. For a moment, there was no sound except the rustle of paper. Mr. Pierce paused, finally looking up at her. There was something different in his eyes. For the first time, he seemed unsure. "You really went all out on this, didn't you?" he said, still looking at the report. "I've got to admit I didn't expect this level of work from you, but I don't know, Tasha, it's impressive. Still, I think we need to talk." Tasha stood there, unsure of what to say. "What do you mean? Is it good enough?" Mr. Pierce leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "It's good enough, but not quite what I'm looking for. There are a few things that still don't sit well with me." Tasha's heart dropped. "So what now?" "I did my best. I gave everything I had." He looked at her, almost as if he was weighing his words carefully. "Here's the thing, Tasha. You've got talent, but you don't have the right connections. You don't know the right people." The words stung more than she could admit, but she stood firm. "What does that mean, Mr. Pierce? What do I need to do to make things right?" He stood up and walked toward the window, his back to her. After a long pause, he spoke again, his voice softer but still cold. "Look, I don't want to say this, but I've got a bigger opportunity coming up. I've been thinking about who I could bring in to help me with it, and it's not going to be you." Tasha felt the room close in around her. She couldn't believe it. After everything, this was what she was going to hear? Her whole body felt like it was on fire with frustration. She wanted to scream, but instead, she took a deep breath. "Fine," she said, her voice surprisingly calm. "If that's how it is, then I guess we're done here." As she turned to leave, she paused. Something inside her told her to stand her ground, to make him see that she was worth more than this. Without turning around, she said, "You'll regret it. You'll see, Mr. Pierce. One day, you'll see." The weeks that followed were hard for Tasha. She had left the company, uncertain about what her future held. But she didn't stop. She kept pushing forward, using every bit of the knowledge and experience she had gained from working under Mr. Pierce. It wasn't long before she landed a new job, a better one, with a company that actually valued her skills. A company that saw her for who she really was. And then, just when she thought she was moving on, an unexpected email came through. It was from none other than Mr. Pierce. The subject line read, "We need to talk." Her hand shook as she clicked it open. "Dear Tasha, I made a mistake. I need your help. I'm reaching out because I have an opportunity that only you can help me with. I'm in over my head, and it's bigger than I thought. If you could consider working with me, partnering with me on this, it could change everything for both of us. I know I've hurt you and I can't undo that. But I hope we can build something together. I'll give you more than you've ever asked for. I'm asking for a second chance. Please, let's talk. Best regards." Pierce. Tasha couldn't believe her eyes. It had been months since that day in his office, and now he was asking for her help. But the irony wasn't lost on her. The same man who had humiliated her, belittled her potential, now wanted to partner with her. She sat back in her chair, staring at the email. A mixture of emotions surged within her: anger, disbelief, but also something else, an opportunity. This was her chance to turn the tables, to show him that she had always been more than what he saw. That despite everything, she was the one who had the power now. But Tasha wasn't interested in revenge. She was interested in success. And if this partnership meant proving her value in the world, then she was ready. She clicked reply and typed a single sentence: "Let's talk." Tasha couldn't stop thinking about the email. Her mind raced with possibilities, with questions and doubts. Mr. Pierce's words were still fresh in her mind. "I made a mistake. I need your help." But how could she possibly trust him again? After everything, how could she even entertain the idea of partnering with a man who had treated her so poorly? She sat on it for a few days, weighing her options. She knew this was more than just about work now. It was about something deeper: respect, power, control. She had built herself up from nothing, fought for every inch of ground she'd gained, and now she was being offered a seat at the table of someone who had once treated her like an afterthought. The question was, did she want to take that seat? Did she want to be the one who showed him that she was the better choice, not just for the project, but for the position he had always taken for granted? Finally, after days of thinking, she responded to his email. "Mr. Pierce, I've thought about it long and hard, and I'm willing to meet. But this is going to be on my terms. If you're serious about partnering with me, then we'll do it as equals. No more belittling, no more dismissing me. If you want my help, you have to respect what I bring to the table. It's time you see me for what I really am, someone you need, not someone you can control. Let me know when you're free. Tasha." She sent the email and closed her laptop, not knowing what to expect. It didn't take long for him to respond. "Let's meet tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., my office." The next day, Tasha walked into Mr. Pierce's office, her posture straight, her confidence radiating. She wasn't the same woman who had walked in months ago, unsure of her worth. This Tasha was different. This Tasha knew exactly what she brought to the table, and she was ready to prove it. Mr. Pierce was behind his desk, looking as polished as ever. But when he saw her, something shifted in his expression. He stood up, extending his hand with a look of cautious respect. "Tasha," he said, his voice softer than it had been before. "Thank you for coming." Tasha took his hand, shaking it firmly. She wasn't here to play games. "Let's get to the point, Mr. Pierce. I'm here because I believe this could work if we do it right. But make no mistake, this is a partnership. No more one-sided decisions. If you want to work with me, you'll have to treat me like an equal." He nodded, looking at her with a new kind of respect. "I understand. I was wrong before. I see that now. I'm willing to do things differently." Tasha studied him for a moment, unsure if his words matched his intentions. But she wasn't here for apologies. She was here for results. "Good. Then let's start with what you need from me." They spent the next hour discussing the project, an ambitious new venture that could make or break the company. Mr. Pierce laid out his vision, but Tasha quickly realized that her perspective, her ideas, were exactly what the project needed. She wasn't just a helper in this scenario. She was the key. As they talked, Tasha felt herself slipping into a rhythm. She wasn't just agreeing with him, she was challenging him, offering solutions he hadn't thought of, pointing out weaknesses in his plan. And for the first time, he listened. Not just listened, but respected her input. By the end of the meeting, something had shifted. Mr. Pierce wasn't just the boss anymore. He was a partner, one who recognized that Tasha was more than just an employee. She was an asset. When they stood to leave, he extended his hand again, this time with a genuine smile. "Tasha, I'm looking forward to what we can accomplish together." She took his hand, but this time, her grip was stronger. "So am I, Mr. Pierce. So am I." Over the next few months, Tasha and Mr. Pierce worked together on the project. It wasn't easy. There were times when they clashed, moments of tension as their different leadership styles came into play. But something had fundamentally changed. Tasha was no longer just a worker for him. She was his equal. She pushed him to think bigger, to be better, and in return, he learned the true value of collaboration and respect. And then, when the project was a success beyond anyone's expectations, Mr. Pierce made an announcement. "To my entire team," he began in a company-wide email, "we've just wrapped up a major success, and I'd like to thank everyone who contributed. But there's one person I want to highlight today. Tasha." He went on to detail her incredible contributions, acknowledging the value she had brought to the project. Tasha's leadership, her creativity, and her drive were crucial in making this happen. It's time we recognize talent for what it truly is. And today, I'm proud to announce that Tasha will be taking on a new role with us as my co-director. The words hit Tasha like a wave. Co-director, the title she had always dreamed of, the respect she had always wanted. And it was hers, not because she begged for it, but because she earned it. Tasha smiled to herself, knowing this was just the beginning. She had proven that she could stand tall, that she could rise above any obstacle. And with her new role, she was ready to change everything. As the months passed, Tasha and Mr. Pierce's partnership flourished. They went from being colleagues to business partners, and eventually they became close friends. He learned to respect her for who she was, not just for her skills, but for her strength, her integrity, and her resilience. And as for Tasha, she never forgot the lesson she had learned. Sometimes, the world tries to tell you that you're not enough, that you'll never make it. But the truth is, you don't need to prove anything to anyone but yourself. And if you're willing to fight for what you deserve, there's nothing that can stop you. Now, I've got to ask you, what would you do if you were in Tasha's shoes? Would you trust someone who had mistreated you before? Or would you walk away and find your own path? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And hey, if this story inspired you, stick around for more. There's always more to learn, more to share, and more stories that just might change your perspective. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.